George Galloway is one of the most divisive figures in British politics today. He was most recently the MP for Bradford West, but has now decided to run for Mayor of London. Well, Mr. Galloway joins us here today at the University of Cambridge. Thank you very much for joining us here. I'd like to start by asking you, the government says it will accept 20,000 refugees over the next 5 years. Do you think that's enough?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure why you should describe me as one of the most divisive figures in British politics. As a matter of fact, the ideas that I stand for are the ideas of the great majority of people in the country. Perhaps here in these green fields of Cambridge University, that's divisive. But the things I stand for, opposition to the war in Iraq, support for the Palestinian people, opposition to nuclear weapons, opposition to what they call austerity, which is really the class war that the rich is waging on the poor. I don't think these are divisive stands at all. As for refugees, I don't want any refugees, not 20,000, not 2,000. I want the refugees to be able to return to their own countries, to their own homes. And that means stopping doing the things that we have been doing, which have created these refugee flows in the first place. Most, 80% at least, of the current wave of refugees are from Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan. And I have opposed British government policy in all three of these theatres. And if people had listened to me, we wouldn't have these refugees now. 1 million people plus would still be alive that are dead and buried. And we ought to concentrate on that. Of course, it's distinctly un-Christian, to say the least, to bomb someone's country and then lock the door on them when they're fleeing from your bombs. And so no words could be dredged to sum up the contempt one must feel for a government that does that bombs and locks the doors at the same time.
So do you think the British government is doing enough? Do you advocate for accepting more refugees into Britain?
As I said, I don't play that numbers game because I'm not in favour of any refugees. I want all the refugees to go back to Syria, back to Iraq and back to Afghanistan, and that means ending the wars there.
Okay, but pragmatically, we've seen that the current government's policy is focusing refugees to be resettled in the north of England. As Mayor of London, would you advocate for more refugees to be resettled in London?
Well, it's the third time you've asked me the question, and I'm going to give you the same answer for the third time. I don't get into the numbers game. I don't want refugees. I want refugees to be back in their own country. Countries like Syria are being intellectually decapitated by what's happening there. The people who are fleeing Syria are the people that Syria most desperately needs. They're doctors, surgeons, public servants, people who are vitally needed in Syria and who oughtn't to be being forced to flee.
Prior to Jeremy Corbyn's election as Labour leader, you said you would rejoin the Labour Party pretty damn quick if he was made leader. Have you reapplied to join the party?
No, and I don't intend to reapply. The Labour Party has to rescind my unjust wartime expulsion. I don't want compensation. I don't even want an apology. But they must rescind that unjust expulsion, which was opposed at the time by Mr. Foot, the former leader, by Mr. Benn, the great Labour figure and figurehead, and of course Mr. Corbyn. So I'm waiting for the Labour Party to rescind my expulsion, which would have the effect of reinstating me in the party. I'm not asking for readmission.
If they were to rescind your expulsion from the party, would you drop out of the race for Mayor of London in favour of the current Labour candidate, Sadiq Khan?
Well, if you'll forgive me, I'll negotiate that with the leadership of the Labour Party, not here at Cambridge.
You've been described as a rape apologist by the MP Jess Phillips, and you've accused the MP Naz Shah of lying about being forced into a marriage in which she says she was repeatedly raped.
I thought we were here to talk about foreign policy.
We're talking about your race for the Mayor of London. Now, the Met says there's been a 15% increase in the incidence of rape in London. How will you convince voters you will address that issue?
Well, no voter has ever raised that issue with me. The proximate cause of this Jess Phillips's comments were my intervention in support of Julian Assange, whose cause I support absolutely. And moreover, it's a cause that's very close to being vindicated. So you'd have to be careful that by the time your film came out, that his position and mine were not entirely publicly vindicated. Julian Assange ought to be given the Nobel Peace Prize, not locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy being falsely traduced.
But the issue there is that Julian Assange and his activism for freedom of speech, for example, can be separated completely from his actions as a person, for what the Supreme Court has described as being would be against the law if he's found to have carried out these actions.
Yes, but he hasn't even been charged, never mind convicted of those actions, and he can't go to Sweden, even though Sweden allowed him to leave freely, and he checked before he left that he could, because Sweden will not guarantee that he will not be extradited to the United States to face a secret grand jury and up to 100 years in prison for blowing the whistle on American crimes in the world. That's the nub of this story. It's nothing to do with rape, actually. It's everything to do with the hatred of the US government for people who betray their secrets, even when those secrets are matters of the gravest public concern. That's why Chelsea Manning is currently serving, I think now, 35 years of her life for giving Julian Assange and WikiLeaks those secrets in the first place. This is not nuclear science. If Sweden was interested in investigating claims about Assange's personal behaviour, they would easily have come to London and questioned him, which was always open to them to do, or they would have given an assurance that they would not further extradite him to the United States, and they haven't been prepared to do either of those things.
Okay. So you've previously tried to declare Bradford an Israeli free zone. Will you try a similar policy in London?
No, and the Mayor of London has no power whatsoever to do that.
And you didn't have that power in Bradford?
Yes, as a Member of Parliament, the Parliament of Britain controls the British government's foreign policy. So, as a Member of Parliament, I had every right to take a stand against Israeli crimes, which are even more pertinent as we speak today, as the rivers of blood flow again. But as the Mayor of London, I have neither the power nor the intention of seeking to do that.
Let's just clarify that point though. You seem to suggest that as MP for Bradford West, you had the power to declare Bradford to be Israeli free.
No, and a little knowledge is dangerous, and if you're going to interview me, you need to make sure you've got all the knowledge. I didn't declare Bradford to be an Israel-free zone because I could not. I had no such power to do so. But I did speak for tens, scores of thousands of people in Bradford, so disgusted by the crimes that were taking place in Gaza, to say, we want to boycott you. And frankly, hardly anyone in Bradford is not boycotting Israel. So these are two different things. As the Mayor, I have no power to declare London an Israel-free zone, nor any intention of trying to do so.
Okay. London's economy is roughly the size of Sweden's. What economic or financial credentials or experience would you say you have?
Well, I was elected 6 times to the British Parliament. I spent nearly 30 years as a member of the House of Commons, more than my 2 opponents put together. I have more experience than my 2 opponents put together in the economic field, in international relations, in labour relations, all the things that I concentrated on in the near 3 decades that I spent in Parliament. Of course, the people will decide this matter, whose experience they prefer, whose stand is closer to theirs, who they think would best fight for the majority in London and not the very small minority for whom the current Mayor of London has operated for 8 long years.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you for joining us here in Cambridge.
Pleasure.
Tracy.